What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly sports history for March 19th, 2025. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Wednesday edition of the podcast. Happy Hump Day to everyone out there. Feeling much better today. So let's get into it. And we'll start with the big story in Philly sports yesterday. And Brandon Graham announced his retirement from the NFL after 15 years, all with the Eagles. And this is really just going to be, I don't want to say off the cuff because I don't think that's the right word, but just going to speak about it and kind of get into it because for me, obviously when I was a kid, had a lot of love for a lot of those players like Reggie, Randall, Jerome, Seth Joyner, and obviously it was like a kid. And as you get older, you kind of realize that, hey, these guys are just people, adults, just like us. So you don't necessarily have as much love for them. I was a very huge Donovan McNabb fan, sometimes probably too much of a McNabb supporter. Love Brian Dawkins. But other than that, there's really not many guys since I was a kid, since those Buddy Ryan days, where I'm like, I absolutely love this player. Like, all time. Go to the ends of the earth, like love everything they stand for. But Brandon Graham was one of those guys for me. The fact that he went to Michigan certainly helped that. I remember when he was drafted in 2010, a lot of people wanted, why can't I think of the name? I had it all, Earl Thomas. And basically because that was a need for the Eagles back then. And I said, no, this dude's going to be okay. Like, watching a lot of Michigan games the way I do, I knew that Brandon there was something different about him. Certainly did not get off to a great start. Labeled a bust. He talked about that during his press conference yesterday. They were trying to make him play a position, though, that maybe he wasn't necessarily suited for, but whatever, it ended up working out in the end. But I can honestly say that Brandon Graham may be my favorite Eagle ever. Part of that, like I said, is the Michigan tie. But just if you look at the trajectory of his career, what he had to go through, what he overcame, what he did for this team and this city, and just what he meant to this region as well. I think it's like a movie. It literally is based, I would say, would make a good movie about the life, career of Brandon Graham. And he's not done yet. I'm sure somewhere, some way, he's going to end up in the media. He certainly has the personality for it and everything. But I think he will go down. I'm not going to get into rankings and things like that today, just because I'll be completely honest. And as I always try to do on this podcast, try to be as honest as possible. I always try to give you facts that are accurate. And even when I give my opinions, it's truthfully just make it a point to be like, hey, this is how I feel, and be authentic with you. I'm not able to do that today. I don't think my judgment would be good. I think it would be potentially overrating and not accurate. So I'm going to hold off on that for right now. But I do think he goes down as one of the greatest Eagles ever. I think he is absolutely, without a doubt, unequivocally, the most authentic Eagle ever. You knew all the time what he was thinking. He did not hold anything back. And I think in a town or a city, a team and as a fan base where we want our players to be authentic, we want our players to feel the pain that we do when they lose. We want them to hate the Cowboys. We want them to be upset when they lose, but be as high as we are when they win. Brandon Graham was that guy. He, like I said, you knew what he was feeling. And in his speech, like I said, he talked about the whole depression that he went into when he received that bus label, and how it really did get to him. But through the help of some of the players and his wife, he was able to overcome it and honestly become a legend. He talked about fans holding the players accountable and holding him accountable. And I think he has the mental makeup and the ability to see that as, you know what, self-reflect and say, I could be better. I'll be honest, I got emotional during the conference. Usually, like I said, would not do that. Didn't do it with Kelsey, didn't do it with Fletch, didn't do it with Brian Dawkins or Donovan. But there was just, like I said, there was something different about Brandon Graham because I feel like Brandon Graham is one of us. Certainly immersed himself into the community, lives in the area, isn't going anywhere. But I feel really like Brandon Graham is what Bryce Harper is striving to be, if that makes sense. And this is not any way a knock against Bryce. This is a Brandon Graham appreciation. But I think Brandon Graham gets it, and I feel as though he is one of us. Obviously, the numbers on the field speak for himself. Not going to be a Hall of Fame player, and I think that's okay. But to be number 3 on the Eagles' all-time list in sacks behind Reggie White and Trent Cole, pretty impressive. Just ahead of Clyde Simmons, another guy who could be, I think, a borderline Hall of Famer. The 206 games, the most by far in Eagles history. 15 years, longest tenured Eagle ever. Probably no one will ever break that. And if you think about it, 15 years in the NFL with one team is pretty impressive. And even in Philadelphia, our most tenured athlete ever, I believe, and this could be pre-1950. There might be somebody else, so I will look it up. But Mike Schmidt had played 18 years, and we know how we all feel about Mike Schmidt and everything. But Brandon, like I said, it's just yesterday hit different than most retirement announcements. And like I said, because I feel like because of the way he put himself out there, you feel like you know him. You feel like he's one of the guys you go grab a beer with and just talk shit and go back and forth. And he's going to be missed. Certainly a great career, 2 Super Bowl titles, one of a handful of guys in Philadelphia history to win 2 titles in the city of Philadelphia. I think off the top of my head, Bednarik, obviously the 74-75 Flyers. You had a lot of guys on that 48-49 team, but truthfully, it's an Eagles town. And I mean, you got Bednarik, Brandon Graham, Lane, Rick Lovato, and why can't I think of the name of our kicker right now? I always thought Rick Lovato was going to be the guy. I cannot think of the name of our kicker for the life of me. It'll come to me. But Jake Elliott. But I think Brandon certainly has cemented himself as one of the all-time greats in Philadelphia sports history. Not just the Eagles, Philadelphia sports history. Obviously, the strip sack might be the biggest play in franchise history. Still talks about it. It's one of those things that he'll always remember, will always remember, because it was their first time. But Brandon Graham, thank you for 15 great years. Thank you for believing in us. And I think it goes both ways. I think we were tough on him at the beginning because our expectations were so high, but we stuck by him. But more importantly, Brandon Graham stuck by the fans of the Philadelphia Eagles. And I just wanted to say thank you, Brandon. Thank you for 2 championships. Thank you for the strip sacks. Thank you for being authentic. And just thank you for everything you've meant to this team. I certainly appreciate you. That does lead to the question of the day, though. I mentioned the strip sack. Is the strip sack the biggest play in Eagles history? I'm not saying best play. I'm not saying greatest play, but the biggest play in Eagles history. I think you have a very, very small amount of those plays that you can choose from. There's certainly been a lot of great big plays. 4th and 26, Bryce's home run. But that strip sack directly led to a Super Bowl title, our first Super Bowl title. And I think I had it, I mean, the strip sack, you could say the Phillies special, you could say Coop's interception return this year in the Super Bowl, the dagger play to Devontae this year. But what is the biggest play in Eagles history. Is it the strip sack? That's where I'm going. 267-495-8531. That'll get you into the Back to the Future voice and text line. Get that. Anything else Philly sports related off your chest. Share your thoughts on Brandon. It's a Brandon Graham Appreciation Day here on the podcast. All right, some housekeeping notes. Be sure to follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mont on Twitter and TikTok. On Instagram, at Philly Jimbo. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mont. Continue to spread the word as we grow this thing. I've been talking to you about Lenny Wagner, the author of Playing with the Best, One Man's Journey Through the Golden Era of Sports, biography about Walter French, Moorestown, New Jersey native who played pro baseball, played pro football, played at a high level college basketball, one of the greatest to ever play, and somebody who we didn't hear about. So be sure to check out Lenny and his book. I'm in the process of editing and figuring out the presentation for the interview I did with him last weekend. But look up Walter French. Great story. And if you are interested in the book, Lenny tonight is going to be at the Riverside Historical Society in Riverside, New Jersey, signing books, copies of his books at 7. So go check him out. And if you do go and check out Lenny, be sure to mention that you heard it from me. But stay tuned for that. First week of April is when I plan on airing the bits and pieces from the interview. But Lenny Wagner tonight at the Riverside Historical Society at 7, signing his book, Playing with the Best, One Man's Journey Through the Golden Era of Sports, the Walter French story. All right, let's start there, or not start. Let's go then to a recap of yesterday's question of the day. We did a little bit. It was a big day for Wilt Chamberlain yesterday, and I asked you, everybody talks about the GOAT between MJ, Kobe, and LeBron, but nobody talks really about the big men. And I asked, who was the best big man in NBA history? Really no surprise. 60% said Wilt Chamberlain, but a lot of this was drawn down generational lines. Bill Russell got 20%, followed by Kareem and Shaq. But I think Ken from Wyncote probably summed it up the best. He said, Wilt is the greatest big man to ever play the game, and it's not even close. And it's hard to argue that if you look at the numbers. Dave up in Scranton did mention that as a Sixers fan, it pains him to say this, but he was going to go Bill Russell because of the titles. But I guess it's hard to argue that because he was probably the most dominant and best player on those teams. However, he played with a ton of Hall of Fame talent as well, where Wilt never really had that luxury. And the one year he did have Hall of Fame talent around him, they put together one of the greatest seasons in the history of the NBA. But thank you, as always, for participating in the question of the day. Wilt Chamberlain, as voted on by you, the listeners, 60% of you think he's the greatest big man in the history of the game. Sixers are in Oklahoma City tonight to take on the Thunder. And a lot of talk has gone around the league about Quentin Grimes and kind of an underrated pickup by the Sixers. Everybody's talking about the Mavs getting rid of Luka, but Quentin Grimes has been on a tear since coming to the Sixers, and a lot of people were asking me yesterday, he is a restricted free agent at the end of the season, so there is a stronger possibility that he could be back with the Sixers, depending. I think a lot over these next 15, 16 games is going to determine sort of the makeup of this lineup. But Quentin Grimes, proven to be a player. Phillies, Cristopher Sanchez looks amazing. They have him playing and pitching on the road. If you remember last year, his splits between the home and away were completely different. Pitched on the road yesterday, 5 innings pitched, gave up no runs, had 2 strikeouts. His velocity is getting up there in the mid to high 90s, which is a good sign. But he's looked absolutely sharp in spring training this year. From a bullpen perspective, Jose Alvarado and Orion Corcoran both look good again. Not giving up any runs in there. I think Corcoran gave up a hit. But other than that, they're looking sharp. And, of course, Castellanos, the ever opportunistic. As soon as Brandon Graham announced he was retiring, he hit a home run. So Castellanos just has a knack for when big events happen. hitting a home run. So hopefully we have a lot of big events happen this year and Cassidy's home run numbers go up. But the Phils are back in action today against the Yankees. We're almost a week away, hard to believe, from opening day. Next week, we will do a little bit of a Phillies preview with some predictions and picks and things like that. So stay tuned for next week. Be sure to check out my boys at the Clashing Conferences podcast. Lots of great things happening with their sports fan network. Go to clashingconferences.com to check out what they have to offer. It's a very great, unique concept involved with them somewhat right now, and lots of good people in their network. So go check it out. See how you can participate. The clashingconferences.com, and the podcasts are available wherever you get your podcasts as well as on YouTube. And then, of course, Philly Goat. Last day of winter, spring is coming. Get geared up for the spring. Order some tees. Order some golf shirts to wear on the course. I'm thinking about buying one soon for my golf trip I have coming up. And then the shoes. I cannot mention the shoes enough. The canvas loafers, not only are they comfortable, but they look amazing. And then you can get the slides as well. So go to Philly Goat. Be sure to use that promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off your order. That's phillygoat.com. Promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off of your order. All right, today, it's still March. The tournament kicks off tomorrow. So we're going to do a little March Madness theme today. And March 19th was not a great day in Big Five history. First, we're going to go back to 1955. And on this day in 1955, LaSalle lost their bid to become back-to-back national champions when they lost to the San Francisco Dons 77-63 in the national final. The Dons were led by future Celtic Hall of Famers Bill Russell and Casey Jones. See, and Bill Russell and Casey Jones played together in college and they won those championships together. So I'm not taking anything away from Bill, but LaSalle lost to San Francisco on this day in the national championship game, 77-63. Then we're going to fast forward to 1983, and the number 3 seed Villanova Wildcats had all they could handle with Lamar, holding on to win 60-58, moving on to the Sweet 16. We know that they were still 2 years away from winning the national championship, but Nova almost got upset by Lamar on this day in 1983. 10 years later, in 1993, Penn went into the tournament as the 14th seed, almost pulled off the upset of the number 3 seed UMass Minutemen, falling 54-50 in the first round. They actually led by 2 at the half and had an 8-point lead in the first half, but then UMass used its size and power to wear down the Quakers. That happened on this day in 1993. And then 2000. One of the worst losses that I've ever been a part of in person. And this is coming from, I've been at, 3 or 2 NFC Championship game losses. The Tampa Bay game was probably one of the low points. The Carolina game, I was there when Ryan Howard's Achilles blew against the Cardinals. But this, to me, is the worst loss I've ever been a part of. Temple, the number 2 seed, lost to number 10 Seton Hall 67-65 in overtime when Ty Shine came off the bench to fill in for an injured Shaheen Holloway and hit 7 of 11 three-pointers. That was the Final Four team for John Chaney as far as I'm concerned. Still get upset thinking about that one today. And then going back 4 years ago to 2020, hard to believe that was 4 years ago, but back in 2021, in the tournament for the first time since 1996, the number 16 seed Drexel Dragons were blown out by the number 1 seed Illinois Fighting Illini, 78-49. It was Drexel's lowest point total of the season. Just couldn't get it going. But March 19th was just not a good day in Big Five history. And then finally today, our women's Big Five Hall of Fame spotlight, Shelly Pennefather. From Villanova. She played there from 1984 to 1987. She was a part of 2 Big East championship teams. She won the Big East tournament MVP both times. She was a 3-time Big East Player of the Year. And the one year she did not win the award, she was the Big East Freshman of the Year. She was a Kodak All-American in 1987, becoming the first ever woman from the Big East to be named All-American. She also won the Wade Trophy, which is still awarded to the best women's upperclassmen. She graduated as the all-time leading scorer in Villanova history for both men and women with 2,408 points. Her record for the women was broken in 2023, so Shelly held the record for 36 years as the all-time leading scorer for both men and women at Villanova, which is quite impressive. She is the all-time rebounding leader. She was elected into the Big Five Hall of Fame in 1994. Her jersey is retired by the Villanova Wildcats, and she did play pro ball for a few years over in Japan. But Shelly Pennefather, one of the greatest to ever do it, not only in the Big East, but or from Villanova, but in the Big Five, but also the Big East, winning 3 Big East Players of the Year, kind of set the stage and set the tone for what those UConn teams would do in the Big East years later. But first All-American ever in Big East history, obviously the first one in Villanova history. Shelly Pennefather, today we salute you as our Women's Big Five Hall of Fame spotlight. March 19th was not good for the Big Five. Like I said, that 2000 Temple loss to Seton Hall still haunts me to this day. We were sitting there after the Lafayette game in the first round. Once we saw Seton Hall had won, we were like, all right, making plans to go to Syracuse the next weekend, and just tie shine got hot. It's March Madness. That's what happens. Not a good day in Big Five history. We'll have more on the Phillies, Sixers, and Flyers tomorrow. But it's all about Brandon Graham today. Is the strip sack the greatest play biggest play in Eagles history, in Philadelphia history? Let me know your thoughts on that. But Brandon, thank you for 15 great years. Thank you for everything you've done for this community. You will be missed. I know it's just you're shifting. You still are going to be in the area. You're still going to be involved. But like I said, I took that one. I knew it was coming. But yesterday hit me a little bit different than most players when they retired. So Brandon, thank you for everything. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for March 19th, 2025. My name is Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Wednesday. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.